Welcome to the Therapy and Prayer Podcast. Here you'll find the intersection between faith and mental health. I'm your host, Camille. I'm a licensed therapist and clinical social worker, but more importantly, I'm a Christian who really loves the Lord. And I'm just trying to navigate this life without falling victim to it, just like everyone else. Here we take a faith-based approach to all things mental health and wellness, because the Bible tells us to guard our heart and mind, and sometimes we need a little bit of help with that. Welcome back, friends, to the Therapy and Prayer Podcast. My name is Camille. I'm a licensed therapist and lifelong Christian if you're new here. And if you're not new here, hey, friend, I missed you. I'm so happy that y'all are here with me. How are y'all doing? How are we feeling? How are we feeling? As you're listening to this, just kind of take a second and reflect. Use this moment, use this time to reflect on how the last couple of weeks have been for you. Kind of where are you today in this space when you're listening to this? What mindset are you in? How are your stress levels? I want to check on you. I want to check on you because I care. I've been doing pretty good. But it feels like I am doing so many things and also not many things at once. There's just so much always to do. I've been living by myself for a long time now. I think 7-8 years I've really been on my own. But sometimes being the only one to do everything, it gets to be much. Why are there always dishes to be done and never anyone else to do it? Why is there always so much laundry? It's a lot lately. And I think I've just been feeling the weight of everything. I'm a dog mom now too. So I have to take care of my child and myself, and I have to work and pay the bills. It's just been a little bit heavy for me lately, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to do all of it. And even though it's not always easy or comfortable, I'm always able to do it with relative ease. I don't really be struggling for real. I be struggling because it's hard, but I'm capable and God continues to provide. So I'm grateful for that. Anyway, that's actually going to segue us a bit into our topic for today. Today, we are talking about feeling stuck. Now, as a therapist, I don't really have a specialty necessarily. Some therapists have different specialties. Some folks specialize in trauma or in relationship issues or in a specific diagnosis. I'm kind of a generalist. I do a little bit of it all. But I will say that the common theme that I see in pretty much everyone that I work with who either has walked into my office or has reached out for some sort of help and support, the thing that I see over and over and over again is people who feel like they are stuck in their life in one way or another. So I'm sure this is resonating with you, whoever is listening or watching this. I'm sure this is resonating with you in one way or another, because you can be stuck in just about every area of your life. You can be stuck in relationships. You can be stuck at work. You can be stuck in your own toxicity and dysfunctional behaviors in your personal life. You can be stuck just anything. Anywhere there that you have to put energy or expend any energy into it, there's the capacity or the possibility that you might feel kind of stuck there. And what I mean by that is, sometimes we have a vision for how we want things to be or how we want things to go. And so we'll try to put effort towards making that vision come to reality. But then we look up and we're still in the same place, or we only get so far before we have to reset and start over and try again. Or it seems like we're putting in all this effort, but nothing is happening and we're just really feeling stuck. And that feeling can be so frustrating and discouraging, and it can just bring a lot of other issues into our life. It can affect your mental health in a lot of different ways. And it just makes it hard for you to move forward in your life. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, is feeling stuck. We're going to talk about what that means. And we're also going to talk about how God can show up for us in that space. And really why I wanted to talk about feeling stuck is because in my own experience, I've found that whenever I feel stuck, that usually is an invitation from God to be still. And so the relationship between being stuck and being still, I think, is a really important one and really, really valuable if we learn to lean into it and learn to interact with it that way. So that's what we're going to be getting into today. Listen, y'all, strap in because this is a good one, if I do say so myself. So in the last episode, I talked about surrendering control, and I talked a lot about my personal experience about surrendering control in recent months. And the reason that I really had to just lean into that and accept and embrace the concept of surrender is because I was feeling stuck. I was trying everything that I knew to try in order to change my own circumstances. Now, if you haven't already listened to the last episode, then I think you should go back and take a listen. You'll know a little bit more about what I'm talking about, but I just dived a little bit more into the concept of surrender and leaning on God's ability instead of leaning on our own. But the common denominator when people are feeling stuck is that there is always an underlying pattern or cycle of behavior that makes you stay stuck. We all have these patterns that keep playing out. And it's like no matter what you do or no matter what external changes you think you're making, somehow you keep finding yourself playing out this same pattern, the same cycle over and over and over again. Think about when you feel stuck in your relationships, right? Do a lot of your relationships feel similar? Maybe it seems like you keep attracting the same type of person. Maybe you have the same kind of conflict in different relationships. Maybe you've been trying to end a relationship for a long time, but you just haven't been able to. So the pattern or cycle of behavior when we get stuck in relationships typically boils down to one of a few things. Maybe it's people pleasing, lack of boundaries. Those are kind of related, but maybe it's people pleasing. Maybe it's a lack of boundaries. Maybe it's a fear of rejection or abandonment or a combination of those. But if you feel stuck in relationships or you find that you keep having these very similar relationship experiences, when you kind of dig around a little bit, that's probably what's at the root of it. Think about when you get stuck, maybe at work, you're feeling stuck, right? In your work life or your professional life. Maybe you've been too scared to go for a promotion, or you aren't able to advocate for yourself in the workspace, or you're afraid to leave a good job for one that you might enjoy better. Or you stay at a job that you hate and you let people walk all over you in the workplace. Most of the time, the pattern or like what's at the root of that feeling of stuckness is imposter syndrome or a scarcity mindset. My point is, wherever you're feeling stuck in your life, there's a deeper reason why. It's not just happenstance, and it's not just because you haven't found the key to success in that area yet, but it's because there are some deep-rooted things that continue to manifest in different areas of your life. It's not just a matter of being lazy or indecisive. We're actively working against these things that exist somewhere within us, but most of the time we're not even aware of those patterns, or we're not even aware of what's contributing internally to what we're experiencing externally. So there's this disconnect that we feel between our internal process and what we're bringing to the circumstances, and then everything that's happening in the world around us. But consider this. What if you're not really stuck, but what if God is calling you to be still? What if God's calling you to be still so that you can have the space to really figure out what's at the root of your patterns? We can't figure that out unless we slow down and take the time to analyze it and to do some of that deep reflective work to understand all the different elements that are contributing to how we move about the world. Now, this concept of being still is scary for a lot of us. Okay, we live in a world that just really promotes and values productivity, external productivity, like visible, tangible productivity. This world values busyness. It values moving quickly. It does not value rest. We live in the hustle culture and just, rise and grind culture, all of that. So this whole concept of being still is foreign to a lot of us. We don't really find a lot of that in the content that we consume or in social media or any of that. When we get together with friends, everybody wants to know, what have you been up to? What have you been doing? And we feel like we have to have something to say. We have to have something to show for whatever time we've been spending. We feel like we have to have something, impressive to contribute to the conversation. And so that does not really leave a lot of space for stillness. So that scares a lot of us. But another reason that we have a problem with being still is because we really have a problem with avoidance. Now, let me tell you, when you actually take the time, whether it be by yourself, on your own, with you and God, or with a mental health professional, when you actually take the time to sit down and kind of evaluate what's going on with you and evaluate some of the ways that you think about things and the way that you interact with people and the way that you show up in relationships, when you take the time to do that work, you're going to find out some things about yourself, and it ain't always pretty and it's not always comfortable. And we want to actively avoid that sometimes. Maybe you know that at the root of your patterns is some trauma. And I can understand. I'm the first one to say, I'm not excited to look at my trauma or to face my trauma. So maybe we're avoiding that. Maybe we don't want to be re-triggered in that way. Maybe there are some repressed memories that we're afraid might come up if we actually take the time to be still and examine what's happening beneath the surface with us. And maybe we're just afraid of the unknown about what we're going to find when we do start that deep dive work. If you've never really been a very reflective person or haven't been intentional about diving a bit deeper to examine and understand what's happening with you, then there's like this big unknown. This is uncharted territory. And remember last time we also talked about how anxiety is essentially the fear of the unknown. That could apply here too as well. We have some anxiety about being still enough to look under the hood and to figure out and see what's going on. So it's easier just to avoid it, right? Like stick with the devil, you know. Or maybe there's some self-doubt. And a lot of times maybe we doubt whether or not we will have the strength or the capacity to unlearn and relearn new things. That's work. And we are avoidant of hard work in this area, which is so strange because we just said that we live in a culture that's rise and grind and hustle hard and productivity and all of that. So we're not afraid of hard work in general. But when it comes to this personal work, we're afraid of that. And we really want to avoid all of that. I get it. It can be scary. It can be really scary. That's why it's helpful to have a safe space to be able to explore all these things and to have safe people to be able to explore all of these things. So when people talk about going to therapy, it's not just because there's something wrong with them, but sometimes we need a safe place to be able to like explore all of these things without completely falling apart, or to have a little bit of guidance so that we don't spiral too far when we get into the nitty-gritty stuff, right? All right, that's my plug for therapy. That's my first plug for therapy of the day. But, essentially as humans, we're usually scared of change, even if that change is going to be for our benefit. We fight so hard to stay in our comfort zone, even when we know that our comfort zone is not serving us. And in fact, it's probably the thing that's causing us the most pain. That's why we see so much self-sabotage, because we would rather just stay in our own comfort zone. We're not going to get too much into self-sabotage today, y'all. We ain't got time. But the point of the matter is that we often use busyness to numb and to avoid talking about the hard stuff and working through the hard stuff. But the thing about busyness and about like just staying busy and filling your time with things so that you can't slow down, the thing about staying busy is that busyness continues to exist in the context of our dysfunction. So let's say like if you take on more responsibility at work. Well, remember those patterns that we talked about earlier that show up at work, they're still going to show up even in the additional responsibilities that you take on, right? Or if you agree to, help put on an event or something, like that imposter syndrome that was existing before is still going to exist there. If you go and seek a new relationship because you feel like you have too much time on your hands, all the patterns that show up in your relationships are going to continue to show up there. We cannot run from ourselves. Have y'all heard that quote that says, wherever you go, you take you with you? So all these patterns and these unhealthy and dysfunctional and toxic patterns that we are not aware of, they're going to go with you wherever you go. So whatever you fill your time with, whatever you busy yourself with, please believe that those patterns are going to go with you. Those cycles are going to go with you. You can't take it off like a jacket. I wish, but especially if you don't even know that you have it on. You don't even know that you have it on. So how are you going to take it off? Like how does that work? Help me understand. So trying to avoid the stillness and just stay busy instead, it's really counterproductive, because all these cycles are still going to show up. Like we can't run away from it. You can't run away from this work. And then you'll feel even more stuck and even more frustrated. And then you dig yourself into an even deeper hole. This is again where the self-sabotage comes in. You dig yourself into a deeper hole and you feel even worse about yourself because you're feeling stuck in even more ways. It just snowballs. Honestly, when it comes to our healing and our growth, we owe it to ourselves, because it's going to make your life easier in the long run. It's difficult work now to like dig in and look at all of that nasty, scary, ugly stuff. But if you do it now, then there's less that you have to unpack later. Like we have to think about the long game here. We're such a people of instant gratification and the temporary, and like we don't really think about the long game. But life is a marathon and not a sprint. And this is a part of the work in order to give you that endurance to get through the rest of the marathon. As Christians, we need to understand that this type of busyness is a tool of the enemy, because the enemy wants you to stay in your dysfunction. So just keeping you busy, keeping you so busy that you don't have the space or time to heal, Oh, he's happy with that because that's going to keep you in your dysfunction. And the longer you stay in your dysfunction, the longer you identify it as a part of who you are. You begin to identify with the toxicity and with the dysfunction. And we have a hard time separating some of these unhealthy patterns from like who we are as a person. It's really dangerous. It's really dangerous when our negative behaviors and unhealthy behaviors and patterns, when they start to become a pillar of who you are and a part of your identity. That's a scary place to be because you become so much more attached to the dysfunction. You become so much more attached to it when you think that it's who you are, but it is not. It's not who you are. It's maybe things that have happened to you. It's things that you have developed over the years, or things that you've picked up over the years. Whatever. It's a culmination of your experiences, but you are not your dysfunction. When we do start to feel stuck, we start to talk really badly about ourselves. Like, why do I always do this? And I just can't get it together. And I just keep whatever. But we're talking in first person because we are identifying with that thing. We feel like it's just who we are. It's just a part of who we are. And that's going to make you feel hopeless and feel like nothing can ever change. And then you get stuck in that. See, y'all, the stuck is complex. It's everywhere, okay? There's layers to this stuck stuff. So the enemy wants to keep you busy because he wants to keep you in your dysfunction. And God wants you to be still so that he can help you work through the dysfunction. God wants you to be still so that he can show you your patterns and work through them. We don't want to look at the scary stuff. That's why we're running from it. But God wants you to be still so that he can work through the scary stuff. You can't break the cycle unless you slow down and do the work. And in this case, you can't break the cycle unless you slow down and let God do the work. Let God do the work with you. Let God do the work in you. We are not as isolated as we feel, especially as a child of God. We're not as isolated as we feel. But when we just keep moving, it feels like you're on an island alone. And we feel like if we stop moving for a second, and the loneliness is going to get so overbearing, and we're going to feel even more alone and even more isolated. But really, like it's the opposite that happens. It's crazy. Like, we really think that we know a lot. We think we know a lot more than what we actually do. Like, we have these fears that we just believe are facts. Like, if I slow down and stop, then the loneliness is going to be so much. It's going to be unbearable. Well, how do you know? How do you know if you've never slowed down and stopped before? You're afraid that if you slow down, that the loneliness will be unbearable. But how do you know? So we take our fears and then we interact with them as facts. And then it just slows you down even more. That's the real fact. That's what we know. That if you let your fear take center stage, then your fear is going to slow you down. We talked about this last time with the anxiety and the control. It's all about fear. We are a fearful people. Truly, we are. And that's a tool of the enemy as well, because what does the word say? God does not give us a spirit of fear. Come on, somebody. God doesn't give us a spirit of fear. But yet and still, we allow the fear to dictate so much of what we do. The fear will keep you stuck. Okay? The fear will keep you stuck, and the stillness will liberate you. Just let that marinate for a minute. When has your fear brought you any comfort? Besides keeping you in your comfort zone, maybe, but when has your fear brought you comfort? It hasn't. It just hasn't. When has God brought you comfort? Probably a whole lot. But you want to operate in the fear instead of being still and letting him comfort you. That's a little backwards if you ask me. Okay? All right, no shade though. We all get scared. It's all right. Now look, we all have free will and nobody can force you to do the work. So you absolutely have every right to continue moving on, to continue on with your life and letting the deep-rooted stuff just get even deeper. You can continue to do that. You can keep operating in your dysfunction and keep operating in your negative patterns if you so choose. But if you are still listening to this, then I imagine that you're sick of doing the same thing over and over again and that you really want to get unstuck. And I also imagine that you probably didn't realize that maybe you had a lot of deep-rooted stuff that was contributing to the feeling of being stuck. That's that disconnect that we were talking about earlier. We feel like it all has to do with what's happening in the world around us, but so much more is about what's happening with you internally. And only God can really get up in there and see what's going on. well, and mental health professional. But a lot of it is internal, right? And so we have to slow down enough to get in there, dig around, and look around. And we need help with the deep rooted stuff as well, because we're usually not the one that planted that seed. We're usually not the one that planted it, especially if it's related to trauma. That wasn't your fault, babe. You didn't do that. You didn't do that. And so this pattern it's not your fault, and you're not aware of it because you weren't the one who planted it. These things that just come so second nature and have been a part of our lives for so long, we don't even notice them. We don't even notice them because they're just a part of our life. And so we need help sometimes being able to see what is it that is contributing to my cycle of feeling stuck. What is it? We can't always see that ourselves. A lot of therapy is someone holding up a mirror for you and showing you your patterns, showing you your cycles of behavior, showing you the way that you're showing up, the way that you're choosing to show up, and showing you the areas where you can start to make different decisions. A therapist is not there to tell you what to do. A therapist is there to show you what else is taking place and to help you, to empower you to decide how you want to maneuver, given the information that you now have about what else is taking place. There's always so much more going on than what we just see on the surface. And breaking these unhealthy cycles, it's a long and arduous process. I ain't gonna lie to you. I ain't gonna sugarcoat it. I can't sugarcoat it. All right. I told y'all I've been learning some things I thought I had learned for a long time. Okay. And I'm still learning them. And even in the therapy space and in our own like personal growth journey, if you have been on any sort of personal growth journey, you've probably been on it for a while. And you also at this point probably know that it ain't gonna slow down anytime soon. It's literally a lifelong thing. We are always growing and evolving, but doing this hard work to uncover some of your own dysfunction and negative patterns and cycles of behavior, that work is real hard. It gets ugly. It gets kind of scary. Like, listen, okay? I understand why we're afraid to do it. I do, because it's not always comfortable. It's a very vulnerable place to be, and we are averse to vulnerability. But that's also why I'm here, to help you see that, yeah, it might be a little bit scary, but it's scarier to do nothing. And you're not the only one who's scared. This is a shared human experience. This is a shared human experience. We are all afraid of change, and we are all afraid to do something new. We are afraid of who we might evolve into. We're afraid of who we used to be. There's a lot of things. When you show up for therapy or when you show up to do the work, it's not just the present day you that shows up. It's every other version of you that has existed. It's the versions of you that are still the most hurt, the versions of you that are suffering the most, the versions of you who weren't allowed to be seen or visible. All of that is going to show up. And so when you really commit to growing in this way, and when you commit to trying to be unstuck, then you really embark on a journey of exploration, of self-exploration. And you're going to gain so much more than you might be afraid of losing. You're going to have to just take my word on it if you haven't done some of this work on your own, but it's worth it, y'all. I promise it is. I don't know how I got on this soapbox, but I care about this, okay? You don't have to be stuck. You don't have to be stuck. You can be still instead. But this work is so hard because even after you see the pattern, you're like, okay, cool. Didn't realize. Yep, I sure do have. I do have some people pleasing tendencies. Maybe that is a pattern. It's not just about seeing the pattern. It's about understanding it. Where does this pattern come from? What purpose does it serve for me? What is it trying to protect me from? Why do I keep defaulting to this pattern? And what can I default to instead? How can I learn a new skill so that I don't keep going back to this thing? Figuring out what the pattern is, that's just step one. There's step 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on who you are and where you are in this journey, 6, 7, 8, 9, a lot of steps. Okay, we don't know. But the first step is in identifying what's the pattern that kind of keeps me coming back to this place. Why can't I finish this project that I started years and years and years ago? Why do I keep ending up in these relationships that are so draining to me and I never get nothing back? Like, why do I keep getting stuck? If you are not taking the time to get curious about those things, then you're doomed to repeat the same thing. If you do nothing, you will repeat the same cycle. If you do nothing, you will stay stuck. I don't want that for you, friend. But we need help learning new patterns and also learning new beliefs, because what's under a lot of these patterns is a negative core belief or negative beliefs about who we are. So we identify the pattern and we need to try to understand it. A part of that is understanding what is authoring this thing in me. What is authoring the people pleasing? Is it because I feel like I'm not worthy and that I have to convince people to stay in my life? Do I feel like I don't have anything to offer? And so the best thing I can do is try to make people happy. Like, what is it? And we need help sometimes uncovering those beliefs about ourselves and working through them and authoring new beliefs. Sometimes we need help giving ourselves permission to author a new belief, or giving ourselves permission to believe something else about ourselves. But you have to be able to do that for yourself, which is a part of why this work can feel so isolating. And that's why it's so important to invite God and to do the work with him. Because even though this is grueling and it might feel very uncomfortable, God is not going to leave you in your misery. He's not going to abandon you in your misery and in your dysfunction. He's not going to just pull all these things up and then just leave you and be like, all right, here, now you deal with all of it. He don't work that way. He don't work that way. He's too gracious and merciful and kind. Now, he might stop you in your tracks. He might take some things away from you to get your attention, but he's not just going to leave you. He's not going to abandon you. He's going to be in it with you every step of the way. But that's why he needs you to be still. He's not going to leave you to navigate the unknown by yourself, because it's only unknown to you. It's not unknown to him. So trust him to guide you through it. It ain't unknown to him. Isn't that comforting? All right, that's going to lead us into our scripture for the day. Okay, let's get into the word and see what the Lord has to say about all of this. Exodus 14:14 says, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Stop moving and let God do the hard work. Now, what does it mean, though, for God to fight for you? Like, that's one of the things that I heard a lot in church growing up. Like, God's going to fight for you. He's going to fight your battles. But like, what does that mean? Because he's not showing up in a human form, literally with a sword and arrow saying, Camille, sit back. I got this. He's not doing that. So like, what does it mean for God to fight for you? And I had to really expand my definition of what that meant. But especially in this context, right? If we are fighting against things that are unseen and unknown to us, then my activity in this thing, or my action in this thing, whatever I think and conceive in my own human mind, it's probably going to be not even close to what I need to be doing, because this is unknown to me. This is uncharted territory for me. So a part of letting God fight for me, especially when it comes to the stillness and just leaning into the stillness and being still, a part of it is allowing God to show me myself. Allow God to show you yourself and to show you these patterns that we've been talking about. Allow him to reveal them to you. He can't do that if you're still moving and if you're not tapping in with him. If you're not going to him, if you're not seeking him, then he can't show you yourself. So allow God to show you yourself in this space. He's fighting for you by allowing you to see your dysfunction instead of just letting you continue to rot in it. He could just let you keep sitting in it and just keep rotting. And that's probably what we would do if we just kept moving and refused to be still. He's fighting for you by purifying these negative thought patterns and core beliefs, purifying them and helping you to replace them with ones that are led by his spirit. We're made in God's image. We're a holy priesthood, a royal people. These are the core beliefs that need to be replaced, and we need to be purified so that we can put on those things again. That's how God is fighting for you in this space and in the stillness. He's fighting for you by giving you strength to navigate these uncharted territories, and by providing a light so that you can actually see where you're going. And he's fighting for you by offering provision through new healthy tools, by allowing you to learn new coping skills, by maybe introducing new healthy relationships into your life, new community. All of that is God fighting for you while you're being still. But these things cannot happen if we don't allow the space for it. God gives us all free will, and he's not going to force any of this on us. So we can continue to interact with this feeling of feeling stuck like it's a punishment, even though it's not, but we can keep interacting with it like it is. We can think that all we have to do is keep moving and eventually things will just naturally open up and magically open up. Or We can lean into the stillness, because maybe when you feel stuck, it's because you've done all that you can and you need to create some room for God to do what he's going to do. Being still doesn't mean do nothing. It's still active. And I think that that's a misconception. That's a reason why we're so averse to it, because we're scared to stop moving and to slow down. It doesn't mean just do nothing. We're not just sitting here like twiddling our thumbs. Being still is an active thing. It's just taking the energy that you were using on this thing where you feel stuck. It's taking that energy and putting it somewhere else. It's shifting that energy and using it in a different type of way to facilitate a different type of growth that you might need. And maybe you didn't realize you needed that kind of growth. But being still is not as passive as we think it is, or it's not as passive as it sounds. I know, like, okay, still literally means like lack of movement, but it's not, that's not what it means. It's maybe a lack of this type of movement, of the way that you want to be moving. But being still in one area doesn't mean that there's no movement anywhere else. Maybe that movement is internal, maybe it's spiritual, maybe it's emotional, maybe it's mental. So the energy that you were using and expending over here where you're feeling stuck, right, in these relationships and in this work and in your procrastination and all of that, the energy that you were putting over there trying to fix it on your own, what would happen if you took that energy and put it internal? What would happen if you took that energy and applied it to your relationship with God and started getting curious and allowing God to show you some things? So ask yourself, why is God telling me to be still? Okay, I'm feeling stuck. The things aren't happening. Maybe God is trying to keep me still. Why might he be doing that? What is it that maybe I'm missing by moving too much? That's not an answer that's just going to come to you either. That's an answer that's going to come over time as you rest in the stillness. So why is God telling me to be still? What is he trying to show me about myself in this season? Maybe what is he protecting me from? What am I supposed to be What am I supposed to be learning? What am I supposed to be learning in the exact circumstance that I'm in now? What am I supposed to be learning in this space that he has not yet delivered me from? What do I need to learn in this space in order to be delivered from it? That's a lot of work. That's active. Okay. That ain't passive if you ask me. That is not at all passive. But the stillness invites a level of intentional self-reflection and evaluation. I think that we can only reflect so much when we're so busy and when we refuse to slow down. We're only so aware of what's going on when we're moving so much. And I think we just miss so much. It's amazing the amount of times I'll show something to people, to one of my clients that I'm working with. I'll show them something about themselves and they'll say, why didn't I think of that? Like that. Duh, that makes so much sense. That's so basic. Why didn't I think of it? Well, because you were busy thinking about so many other things. And that's no shade either. It's okay. That's all right. Don't beat yourself up for not thinking about it before. Be grateful that it's been brought to your attention now, and take that to say, what else might I be missing? What else might not be as complicated as I'm making it if I would just slow down, take a step back, be still, and look at what's going on? There's so much blessings in being still. The stillness really is a sacred place. Like really resting in that stillness and allowing God to do the work, allowing him to fight for you. There are so many blessings that come from that. It's an opportunity to get closer to God. It's an opportunity to rest. My goodness, we are so burnt out and exhausted and stressed, my Lord. Being still, if nothing else, is an opportunity to rest, to recharge, to re-energize, to recenter, all of that. You got to stop and slow down in order to do that. So the stillness allows you to rest. It gives you clarity, mental clarity, emotional clarity, spiritual clarity, all of that. There's humility in the stillness. There's courage and comfort to be found in the stillness. There's healing to be found in the stillness. We all want healing. We all want healing, and we'll go to such extremes to get it. We'll go to any extremes except for just to stop and sit down and be still. We'll do so many other things trying to search for healing, but there's a lot of healing in the stillness. So lean into it. We don't have to be afraid of it. Be afraid of what will happen if you don't. Be afraid of what will happen if you just keep going and keep blaming yourself for feeling stuck instead of being afraid of the stillness. All right. So if I had to give one like mental health tip when it comes to this whole concept of being stuck versus being still, if I had to give a mental health tip, it would be, remember that growth only happens outside of your comfort zone, and that what's for you is not going to pass you by. It's always going to be for you. So you don't have to be afraid of missing something by slowing down and being still. That's the scarcity mindset that we live with so much. You feel like if we slow down, then we're going to miss the opportunities and that there won't be any more opportunities for us. That is simply untrue. Give yourself permission to believe something else about who you are and about what you're capable of. And that's going to make it easier for you to be still enough to get unstuck. Yeah, I like that. That was good, Camille. Okay. We have another question from another listener in our question and answer portion. This is probably my favorite. I really like being able to give practical tools and tips and application. I like to be able to speak to what it is that you all are going through personally. That just makes it more real for everyone. So our question today is, how do I know the difference between being stuck and being still? My answer to that would be, don't think of them as two different things. Instead of thinking about it, am I stuck or am I being still? Think about being stuck as an invitation to be still. Anytime you're feeling stuck in something, it's always a good idea to be still and listen for God and ask God to kind of speak to you and give you some guidance and clarity in that moment. So feeling stuck is an invitation to be still. Think about it that way. And that, I think, is going to change our relationship and the connotation with like feeling stuck. You know, we feel like it's an inherently bad thing every time that we feel stuck in something. And if you look at it as a reflection of how valuable you are or of how good you are at something, then it's always going to feel that way. We're always going to have this like resistance, and we're always going to just have this constant battle between this stuck feeling. But if you look at feeling stuck as an invitation to be still and spend some time with God, then that really softens it a little bit. And maybe that would make us just much more willing to slow down and spend some time with God. Feeling stuck is what happens when we resist the stillness. So don't resist it. Lean into it so that you can be ready when God says it's time to move. Because eventually He's going to say it's time to move. And you want to be ready for that. You're not going to be in this place forever. It is temporary, but there's no shortcut around it. You will continue to feel stuck until you lean into the stillness and stay there long enough to do the work and stay there long enough to encounter God and allow Him to fight for you and to fight with you. All right. Ooh, that was good to me. That's all I got for y'all. I really hope that this blessed you as much as it blessed me. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope that you will listen again. Bye, guys. Thanks for listening to this episode of Therapy and Prayer. Make sure you're subscribed and following wherever you listen to podcasts. And if the Spirit moves you, go ahead and leave us a review. If you want to submit a question to be answered on this show, send us an email at therapyandprayer@gmail.com. And make sure you're following us on TikTok at Therapy and Prayer. Thanks again for listening. I'll talk to you soon.